Hey everyone, this is the last part of our Sonata trilogy, the Recapitulation. So the Recapitulation takes the original themes and puts them back in the home key, so in this case C major. We have all of our usual abbreviations, except this time it's ESC instead of EEC. So EEC was Essential Expositional Closure. This one is Essential Structural Closure. You can tell these terms were made up by music theorists, right? We do have two new exciting things to talk about, measures of correspondence and the crux. So measures of correspondence refer to how closely the recapitulation follows the exposition. So if the measure is exactly the same, then it's part of that measures of correspondence. When it's deviating, that's when the measures of correspondence stop. And we'll look at that as an example. The crux is where we come back to having a one-to-one parity with the exposition. So usually the measures of correspondence will end around the transition zone, somewhere in there, because instead of transitioning to the dominant if we're in major, or the relative major if we're in minor, we're really just kind of going around in circles and getting ourselves back to the home key for the secondary theme zone. So something has to change usually. So let's see if we can label some of these things. I'm going to play it for you. You think about where you would put the primary theme zone, secondary theme zone, transition, closing, and then the ESC. I forgot the MC too. Oops. MC. Okay. Okay, so let's put the labels where we can on this one. So we know where the MC is. It's where the music stops. There's a big half cadence. Put that right there, medial caesura. And just like in the exposition, there's a caesura fill that takes us from that medial caesura into the secondary theme zone. So, oops, we'll take the secondary theme zone, put it right there. Primary theme zone starts at the beginning of the recapitulation. We're looking again for the perfect alternate cadence that ends it. It's in exactly the same place. So that's where the transition zone starts. And the closing zone and the ESC are on the second page. So we'll deal with those in a minute. Okay, so the measures of correspondence. We're looking for when it's exactly the same as it was at the beginning of the exposition. So the beginning of this, the same. And when I say exactly the same, there can be deviations, but it should always come back. So this is all the same. So it's somewhere in here that things start to go weird, because I remember from the exposition that this was an F sharp major chord. So let's fix this in our minds. You'd think with technology I could put the two together, but I can't. Okay, so in this one we had this 5-7 going to 1, going to, now we're in G major 5 of 3, so that seems to be the place, right? So we had the going to 1, so let's go back. So this is the same, that's the same, this is the same, that's the same. This is where things stop being the same. So the measures of correspondence start at the beginning and they stop right here. So I'm going to put a bracket. Everybody likes brackets, right? Big bracket there, so that we know that's the end of the measures of correspondence. So now we're looking for the crux. The crux is when it kind of gets back on the horse again and resyncs with the exposition. So what we have here is this augmented sixth going to 5, so that's not the same. This is still different, but right here, the medial caesura and the little caesura fill that follow it seem to be pretty similar. So let's see. Not quite the same because it's a 5/7 chord there. You could probably make the argument, but for the sake of absolute purity, let's put the crux at the beginning of that caesura fill. So not exactly the same notes, but now we're in the home key. It's gone back to being in sync with the exposition, starting the secondary theme zone in C major. Now we're looking for the place where that secondary theme zone has the perfect authentic cadence that is not followed by similar material. So we look on this page. Again, the trill kind of gives it away. This is going to be our essential structural closure, just for the same reasons that we talked about when we looked at the exposition. And then following that is going to be the closing zone. Now the last thing, I added this sort of kind of clumsy bit of music on the end. It should have stopped right there, right? So this is a bit of music that doesn't really do anything other than fill out the ending. I keep doing that. So I'm going to call this a coda. It's music that doesn't belong in the closing zone, but also, you know, it just closes it, finishes off the piece. So that's really all there is. We have 2 new terms plus the slightly different essential structural closure instead of essential expositional closure, and then we have the measures of correspondence where the piece starting the recapitulation is exactly in sync with the beginning of the exposition, and then we have the crux, which is where it gets back together with the exposition after wandering away, usually during the transition zone. So that's it.